The air in the Sutter Roseville Medical Center parking garage was a specific kind of cold, not the crisp, clean cold of a winter night, but the damp, concrete chill that seems to absorb despair. It was just after 9 p.m. on Tuesday, and Maria Santos was finally heading home. Her shift in the pediatric ward had run long, a bittersweet delay spent holding the hand of a frightened 4-year-old finishing his last round of chemo. The emotional weight of the day sat on her shoulders, a familiar heaviness she carried with a quiet grace. All she wanted was the quiet of her Toyota RAV4, the podcast already queued up, the 30-minute drive to her quiet street in Rockland. Her keys jingled in her hand, a small, hopeful sound that echoed off the low ceilings. She pressed the fob. The satisfying thunk of the doors unlocking was the prologue to her respite. She opened the driver's side door, the interior light spilling a warm, golden rectangle onto the well-stained concrete. That's when he appeared. Not from behind a pillar, not in a rush. He simply materialized at the edge of the light, a silhouette that seemed to lean into it, as if starving for its warmth. Maria's breath hitched. He was a young man, pale, with a gauntness that spoke of recent hardship. His clothes, a thin gray hoodie and jeans, were inadequate for the chill. But it was his eyes that held her. They were wide, darting, glazed with a pain that wasn't physical. It was the hollow, fractured look she sometimes saw in their waiting room, a look that spoke of systems breaking down. "Please," his voice was a rasp, a dry leaf skittering on pavement. I need a ride. Just a few blocks. To the gas station." Every cell in Maria's body, honed by years of nursing instinct and city-smart caution, screamed a silent alarm. The garage was too empty. The hour was too late. The look in his eyes was too unstable. Her grip tightened on the car door, a shield between them. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "The nurse in her added, the security desk inside can call you a cab. They can help you." He took a step forward, into the light fully now. She saw the paper hospital bracelet, stark white against his wrist, still attached, flapping like a tiny, pathetic flag. He'd been discharged. But to what? "No," he said, the words sharp, desperate, "no time. Just the ride. Please." He moved closer, his hand reaching out, not towards her, but towards the open car door, towards the promise of shelter, of motion, of escape. "Sir, no," Maria said, louder now, planting her feet. She began to swing the door closed, a barrier of metal and glass. What happened next was a blur of terrible physics and shattered intentions. The man, whose name was Christian Somerville, 30 years old from Orangeville, didn't seem to want to hurt her. He seemed to want the car with a primal, singular need. As the door swung, he threw his body against it. Maria, caught in its arc, was knocked off balance. She stumbled back, a cry tearing from her throat as her ankle twisted on the low curb. He was in the driver's seat in one fluid, frantic motion. "My bag," she screamed, not for her purse, but for the navy blue tote on the passenger seat. Inside it were her stethoscope, the get-well cards from her young patients, the leftover chocolate pudding cup she'd saved for her own son. Christian Somerville didn't hear her. He was a man drowning, and the car was his only life raft. The engine roared to life, a vicious sound in the enclosed space. Maria, driven by a surge of adrenaline and protectiveness for the things that defined her life, did not let go of the door frame. She lunged, her fingers scrabbling for the strap of her bag. "Stop. Please." He threw the car into reverse. The world became a roaring, grinding chaos. The open door, with Maria clinging to it, smashed into a concrete pillar with the force of a cannon shot. The sound was a sickening crunch-thud, the scream of metal and the muffled gasp of breath forced from lungs. Maria was catapulted away, a rag doll in purple scrubs, landing in a heap between two parked cars. The RAV4, door hanging like a broken wing, sped backward, then screeched forward, tires smoking, up the ramp and into the consuming darkness of the night. The taillights vanished, leaving only the smell of burnt rubber and the deafening, ringing silence. Maria lay on the cold ground. A sharp, White-hot fire radiated from her left side. Her vision swam. She could taste blood coppery and warm in her mouth where she'd bitten her tongue. But worse than the pain was the violation. The intimate, mechanical violence of it. The car that smelled of her coffee and her son's soccer cleats was gone. The safety of her routine was shattered. She heard footsteps running from the hospital entrance. Voices calling, "Oh my God!" The world was fading at the edges, but she focused on a single, crumpled piece of paper that had fluttered from her bag during the struggle. It was a crayon drawing from little Leo in room 308. A stick figure nurse with a huge smile. It was face down in a puddle of oily water. The damage was profound. For Maria, it was a fractured pelvis, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and a deep, lingering tremor in her hands that would, for months, make holding a child's hand or a sterile instrument an act of sheer will. The emotional wounds ran deeper, the jump-scare panic at the sound of an engine, the nightmare of that concrete pillar rushing towards her. The devastating loss of the safe harbor she felt behind the wheel. For Christian Somerville, the damage was of a different kind, a pre-existing condition the hospital could not discharge. Police tracked him to a motel in Sacramento the next day. He was found not in a frenzy, but in a near catatonic state, sitting in the passenger seat of the stolen RAV4, which was parked neatly in a space, the damaged door still open. He offered no resistance. In his pockets were the discharge papers from Sutter Roseville Psychiatric Evaluation Unit. He had been released hours before the carjacking, a man set adrift with a prescription and a referral into a world he could no longer navigate. The news anchor's voice would later become measured. A man is facing charges tonight. The suspect was a patient who had just been discharged. The woman was seriously hurt. For the U.S. audience, it's a stark, 60-second tragedy. A crime of opportunity. A random, senseless act. But in the spaces between those facts lives the real story. A dedicated nurse, her compassion met with catastrophic violence. A deeply unwell man, a system's failed catch net. 2 lives colliding in a concrete dusk, both irrevocably broken. The justice system would now process Christian Somerville, charging him with carjacking and assault. But for Maria, recovering slowly in a different wing of the very hospital where it happened, justice felt abstract. The real, haunting question wasn't just why me, but a more complex, painful whisper: what was he running from? And why did his crash have to destroy my world? The damage, for everyone, was far more than a stolen car. It was a theft of safety, of peace, of the fragile belief that the space between your car and the hospital door is a bridge you can cross unscathed.